Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about Path of Exile 2 because the early access of this is about to launch on Friday, December 6th, and somebody just leaked a review for the game accidentally pretty early. So I had a chance to watch that leaked review before it got Thanos snapped out of existence, and it was extremely positive. So let's talk about the leaked review, the impressions, the new gameplay, and why people keep calling it the Diablo killer. Let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So, I am terribly sick right now. Me and the girlfriend did a little Christmas photo shoot for some Christmas cards and stuff. Somehow I got a very, very bad cold, so I feel like death. But I wanted to talk about this because honestly, I am very, very, very excited about Path of Exile 2. For the last couple weeks, they've been releasing these gameplay deep dives, these dev talks and stuff, just explaining every aspect of PoE 2. And what's crazy is that it really does just sound like better Diablo. Now, as a person that's played literally thousands of hours of Diablo and has a big old Diablo tattoo, I've been curious about how specifically you do Diablo better. And it sounds like their methodology is just extra depth. Multi-phase boss fights, more intricate skill trees, darker art, cooler classes, and yeah, it looks very, very, very good. Well, yesterday, somebody called Fextralife posted a video called Path of Exile 2 Early Access Review. Is it the best ARPG of all time? So I had a chance to watch it. I've seen Fextralife here and there. I'm not like an avid fan, but I've watched a lot of their how-to guides. And people, especially a lot of journalists, were pissed saying, how is this possible? There's an ND8 alpha. How did this happen? This has to be them straight up lying. Oh my God, they're going to get in so much trouble. Well, it turns out that video was real. Path of Exile themselves, the official Twitter account, said hey, we gave them early access. A lot of people at Traditional Games Media have a review version of the game. They didn't realize it. We forgot to give them an embargo. It was just unfortunate misinformation. This is not on Fextralife. So it's real. The video that I did have a chance to watch was actually real. So not only was the video incredibly good, it's gone now. Watch, if you actually click the link to the video, it says this has been taken down. So yeah, these people here, though, German Strands, he basically typed out a lot of the big bullet points about the game. And since I watched the video, I can kind of expand on what they're actually talking about. But what's really cool is that it does sound like, in a lot of ways, this is going to be the new forever game. If you've played any Diablo or if you played Path of Exile 1, it's a very seasonal-based game where every 4 months or so, the game completely revamps itself and gives new magic, new gems, new crafting, new systems to keep it fresh. It is the kind of game that's like an MMORPG. You can keep playing it because every patch reinvents it in some way that makes it more interesting. So even in this early access build, it sounds like the game is ginormous. And I think the only reason they're calling it early access is that way they have a chance to keep tuning it, to tweak it, to add on before it hits, 1.0 and they release it on consoles. But okay, here we go. So the people played about 35 to 40 hours just beating the main campaign of it. Now, even that seems pretty wild, and they did say a lot of this was grinding, was leveling up, was trying to get tough enough to actually defeat the bosses themselves. Dark Souls ARPG, another reviewer, thought the same thing. No difficulty options, not an easy game, lots of challenging boss fights. Now, in the video, they kept talking about Elden Ring and Dark Souls. Now, I think some people get a little bit annoyed calling other genres of game Dark Souls-like or Elden Ring-like, but I think the point they're trying to get across is that Dark Souls and Elden Ring have a very unique vibe of victory, where when you win, it does feel like, man, I feel like I'm the first person to have ever figured this out. Oh man, I've slayed a god, or I've defeated this impossible elder beast or whatever, right? It is incredibly satisfying. And from the gameplay, when they showed a couple of the early bosses in their video, it did seem like, man, long, drag-out, crazy fights where you're trying to conserve potions and make sure all your stuff is perfectly in sync and in tuned. And when you win, it is like, holy crap. That to me sounds incredibly, incredibly good. Like, we'll see, because there's definitely been games where fighting a boss can become frustrating just because it has a million health for absolutely no reason, or you keep getting one shot like that. But it made it sound like the difficulty makes it so that your interest in leveling up feels more active. Your urge to keep leveling up feels more engaging. Now, the fact that it doesn't have difficulty options, this to me is interesting, and I kind of want to see that in practice. I do like the difficulty modes in Diablo 4 specifically, where the more you're playing, you keep leveling up and leveling up, going through torment difficulties and stuff like that. So it makes it where the stronger you get in Diablo, you can keep tuning it so it's always barely manageable, right? It's always as tough as you can possibly stand. So the fact that this is tough right out of the gate, that's cool. But I want to see, how I can actually make the game tougher or more fun. Let me move on here. Maps are astronomically large, 1 hour from side to side. Maps feel a bit empty in terms of events. So this part here is what the guy was talking about, is that each of the zones is very, very big. If you're actually just trying to fight your way, he says 1 hour from side to side. In the video himself, he basically explains that it's not walking or riding a horse or whatever that takes 1 hour. It's that you're constantly fighting. Maps are dense. There's a lot going on, so you can't just waltz from one end to the other. It is an actual knockdown, drag-out fight in order to get from one side of the map to the other. And he did make this sound both positive and negative. One of the things he says is, say you fight your way to the boss. This is like a specific thing they say in the Extra Life video. He says, if you fight your way to a boss and you make a good attempt and it's a long drag out fight and you realize, I'm just under leveled, not strong enough, I need to go back to town and work on my gems. Say you ride back to town and then fix yourself up and then level up, spend a couple hours grinding, and then you want to go back to that boss. You have to do the whole hour-long fight across the zone to get back to that fight. And he basically says it's not frustrating, but is that kind of thing where it did remind him of early Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 and a little bit of Demon Souls had that thing where there wasn't like a checkpoint right before the boss. So a lot of times continually grinding across the same zone over and over again to get back to the boss fight that ends up creaming you, for some people can be frustrating. So that is a bit weird. Maps feel a little bit empty in terms of events. Now, that is something that Diablo does well. There's constant cycling events in Diablo 4, whether it is Hell Tides, which are like big storms of demons that happen every hour, or constant randomized events where you're trying to help souls or defeat soldiers or whatever the heck. So I hope that changes. I mean, obviously this is early access for a reason. I do want to see the size of the maps and the difficulty of this stuff, since there isn't typical events. Scratch the tiniest surface of the game after 40 hours. Great sense of discovery, mechanics, builds, and lore. So this is one of the things he talked about, is that as he was going through the game, he kept finding lore books and stuff like that, and he just barely read a lot of those. He was like, okay, the map seems good, or sorry, the story seems good, but this is early access. We're not even getting the whole chunk of the story itself. So even with this tiny bit of it, this tiny taste, it seems like it is an incredibly good story with a lot of depth, which is kind of surprising. I have only played about 30 hours, maybe like 35 hours of Path of Exile 1, and I don't even know what the story is, other than you're a prisoner washing up on shore with a bunch of monsters and stuff like that. But the amount of depth of it, I am not surprised if someone says, scratch the surface after 40 hours. A lot of these ARPGs, honestly, you can spend thousands and thousands of hours of it and still be figuring stuff out, which is part of the addictive nature of it. Feels like 3 games in one, almost limitless combinations of builds, lot easier to respec. 50 to 100 changes was no problem. So this specific part, he's combining a couple sentences they said in the video itself, but he said that now it's a lot easier to tinker with your character. In Path of Exile, you get this massive, massive skill tree with thousands of different talent points, and it can be overwhelming at first because there's passive abilities, active abilities, crit, health, defense, stuff like that. But building out your character with those thousands of talent points is it's a bit of a stressful pain in the ass at times. But essentially, it sounds like now it's a lot easier to just respec, to rebuild and say, okay, I want to undo this branch and go down this branch instead, where I'm defensive, I'm tanky, but I'm not critting enough. Let me get all these crit talents instead. So that sounds great that it's a lot easier. In the video, he basically says that there is just a redeem. You can just add stuff or subtract stuff. It's not like it costs a huge chunk of money or has some like rare resource required for respecking. I think it's cool the game really does encourage experimentation. I feel like all the most successful games now have that ability to say, I messed up, let me try that instead. And the fact that he was able to rechange stuff 50 to 100 times in 40 hours, props to Fextra Life for really testing the limits of it. Let me see. There's a quote here that he says right after that he did not show, which was his problem with one of the classes. In the video, he played as the new character, the mercenary. The mercenary specializes in crossbows and stuff, but the crossbows can do different stuff like exploding shots, ranged shots. There's a sniper, which actually hits from further away. And he said that it takes a lot of practice because in this game, if you're playing on a PC, it's click to move, but it's also click to attack. So since now you can move and attack at the same time, it kind of takes some practice of getting good at clicking a destination and then clicking an attack and trying to do both. And he said like after some practice, he got good at it, but it did still say, he said it didn't feel quite as good. It sounds like something that'll feel a lot better if you play it with a controller, if controller is available at some point. Okay, let me talk more about this. Oh God, I'm so tired. Outstanding dark theme art direction, clearly inspired by Diablo 2. Details on skill effects and boss designs are the best in the industry, the ARP genre. That's so good. I've seen a lot of people talk about how they miss the vibe of Diablo 2, about this specific era of darks and depths. Oh, my kitty's coming over here. You can see how sick I am. Let me scoop you. I'm gonna scoop you for fun. Oh, look at my good baby. Look at my good baby. Hi. Outstanding dark art theme direction, clearly inspired by Diablo 2. Details of skill effects and boss designs are the best in the industry. I do think I like Diablo 2's art a lot, but unpopular opinion, I really love Diablo 4's art. I know a lot of people like to bag on it. It's very popular to bag on Diablo 4, but I always thought that Diablo 4 had a very modernized darkness to Diablo 2. Diablo 2's art was very much dead bodies, crazy chaos, blowing people to bits and stuff like that, whereas Diablo 3 had that cartoonish World of Warcraft art style that was kind of bizarre. So it's cool that this is going back and really plumbing the depths of that Diablo 2 aesthetic, which is really, really cool. Blown away by the amount of detail. Most dynamic combat in an ARPG. Switching to controller was a revelation. Interesting. So it does have controller support. So I'm definitely down for that. I'm probably going to try it with controller just because I am curious about. I've mostly played Diablo with a controller. Even when I'm playing it on PC, I play it with my Xbox controller because I just think it plays better with controller. I know personal tastes, but it's interesting. Most dynamic combat in an ARPG feels like a game that was designed for controller first. Wow. Plays even better than Diablo 4 with a controller. Wow. That sounds so good. Man, I am definitely into that. Because Diablo 4 feels so fantastic with a controller. Potential to be the all-time king of the genre. Some bugs and crashes occurred. Strong belief that the developers will join the annals of greatness alongside Lariat Studios and From Software. That is wild. Now, some people are saying the footage that's in that video is outdated with more flask shots in the game. It absolutely does not take 1 hour to go from side to side of the zone unless you go AFK for at least half that time, and no one tested in game. So a lot of people are basically saying something about this feels a bit off, but the fact that PoE themselves has said the video is real, I'm inclined to believe it. But I got to admit, I was excited about the idea of Path of Exile 2. I feel like everything about this month sounds so good. Indiana Jones coming up, Legacy of Kain coming up. There's rumors that they may shadow drop The Thing remastered, but Path of Exile 2 is quickly becoming one of my most hyped games to play. But what do you guys think about it? Please give me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. I am dying here. I do genuinely appreciate y'all watching the video. I I'm going to go to bed. I feel like death. Love you guys. Please enjoy your day, play some games, and keep dreaming. Ugh. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.